So what we're doing, we're going to talk about some ham radio. Bear with me because this is kind of, I'm going off what I got here. What ham radio is a way of communication, right? And our plan is to communicate amongst our brethren, right? The main thing is we want to have communication if these cell phones go down. Okay, we want to set things up where, say, the Saints here in Tennessee can talk to the Saints in Kentucky, and they can relay it over to the Saints in South Carolina, and you know, it's this one big net. That's the plan. If the cell phones go down, how are we gonna talk to each other? You know, if you're up here in Maryland and I'm in Tennessee and stuff's going down in Tennessee and I can't get on the cell phone or on the internet and relay that to you, what's the plan? This is ham radio, okay? So there's different types of ham radio and a lot of information on this, brothers. A lot of information. A lot of it goes over my head, okay? My brother right here, he's got it all down like a notebook. He's got it written down. So I'm here to try to keep it as basic as possible, so we can all get on the same level with it of what we want to do with ham radio, right? So you got to ask yourself, what am I doing with it? So starting out, you know, we got these little handhelds. You see a lot of brothers around the land carrying these, and a lot of them just think, oh, that's just a walkie-talkie. But at the same time, you can do a lot more with this. You can reach out up to 20 miles with a little handheld like this right here. Now, you ain't gonna talk around the world with it, but something like this and something like this right here, you're gonna be able to talk to Australia on the right frequencies. Okay. So this is what we need as far as base stations. They call it a base station. You want to set this up for that communication all around the country to the different saints. But starting out, you're going to be over here on these, all right? And that's the best place to start is with a handheld and keep it simple. We're going to start. Y'all ask some questions, and we're going to try to, you know, y'all bring the questions, and we'll try to help you as much as possible, you know? So,
I got a question.
Go ahead, bro.
What is it that makes you have to have a license? Because I know some of them you have to have a license.
Yeah, you got to have your ham license. That's just, they have regulations, you know, what is it, bro? AARL? Or
no, it's the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. They say that you have to have a license to do that. It's a license to do something that you can just do by pushing this button. You can't transmit without a license on certain frequencies. You're allowed to, in some cases, like with a CB radio, you can just get one of those and use it. Or you can have your regular walkie-talkies, you can just get those and use them because they've allowed you to. Now, the licensing is for the other frequencies. You definitely have to have a license to use this. Because you're talking about higher power here. Like he said, you're reaching out to other parts of the world. This is where the license makes sense. So you're educated and you're not trampling all over someone else's communications. It's to have good traffic flow. So that's where the license makes sense. But there's a licensing process consists of you studying for a test. There's 3 different license classes too. There's the technician class, there's a general class, and there's an extra class. You can actually get them all at once if you study for all 3 tests at the same time. That would be kind of difficult, but it can be done and has been done. Now, this type of radio here, to use all of its functionality, you can technician class exam. It's $15 for the test, and it's 35 questions, and you have to get 26 of them right. So, and it's fairly simple. If you have any kind of technical background, you'll probably be able to pick up the knowledge to be able to pass that test.
Let me say something on that. All right. Me, myself, I just got my technician license this year because a brother, you know, influenced me to do it. And I don't understand none of it, you know what I'm saying, as far as all the terminology. You're going to look at this test and be like, what is this stuff? You know, I don't know what, you know, any of this means. So what I did is I just crammed the answers in. There was like 400. I used the app on the cell phone. I took an app and it had like 400 questions on it, and I went through all 400 for about a week straight, and just memorized the questions. And you really ain't gonna learn nothing like that. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, I'm learning by putting my hands on it, by actually using it. You know what I'm saying? But to pass that test, if anybody y'all know, you cram something in and you remember that answer. So that's how I done it. Everybody's gonna be a little different, but don't let the knowledge overwhelm you, okay? Because like I said, there's a bunch out there, but just keep it simple. Keep it as simple as you can think, and we'll all get there together. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you kind of basically went over the purpose of why we need it, or why community is needed, so we all communicate amongst one another if cell phones go down. Can you explain or go over the type of model that these radios are, or models that will be good starting out, and the type of base station that we would need once you get your license, or where you can actually get a base station to start the process? That way everybody can kind of have an idea of where to go.
So again, this is going to be this. I mean, I can use this radio. I've got the license to be able to use this base station and talk to whoever I can reach out to. But I still use this, and actually this radio here does the same thing. This is, most of y'all are familiar with the CB radio. This is the same function, but it operates as a, it operates on the frequencies that this does. So this is just a big version of this, and it uses an antenna like this. This is a you've seen people with CB antennas. You should be familiar with that. So effectively, it's kind of the same thing. It just a little different.
It just operates on a different frequency.
It's on a different frequency.
So your CB's on a certain frequency, and these are on certain frequencies. Your frequencies, to understand them, is some of them can reach out, say 5 miles, 10 miles, and then the bigger ones, the HF frequency, for example, like I said, you go around the world with that.
So, this would be like in its current state with the factory antenna, like it is. This is like 0 to 5 miles. I mean, you can talk to the guy next to you. This would go, because it's higher power, this will also go from that, and it's the same frequencies, it will go from the 0 to maybe 30, 40, sometimes up to 50 miles out. So then when you get to here, you might ask yourself, because this is a question that I think about, why wouldn't you just get this if you can talk the whole world with it? Why would you carry this when you could just go home and use that and talk to everybody? Well, that's because the way this operates on the frequencies it operates on, it won't do the short distance that this does. They have different roles. So you kind of have to have both.
You ain't mobile with that big.
You're not going to be carrying. This joker's heavy. You can ask him. This power supply had some weight to it. You're not going to be carrying that in your pocket.
You're going to be setting up a big antenna, out at your house. Yeah. So like these, like I said, these are your base right here. These are handheld radios. This would be known as a mobile.
Yes.
Correct. And then this is a base station.
Question? What model? What's the name? Okay. Manufacturer?
Baofeng.
These are Baofeng. These are some of the cheapest ones you're going to get. They have a lot of features in them. This one is a BF F8 Plus. I'd probably recommend, if you're looking at getting one, that you go with what Brother Ethan's got here, which is the BF F8 HP. This is the latest generation they got of these. They run like 50 or 60 bucks. How much was this antenna?
Like 20 bucks.
And how much range did you increase? What was it before and after?
So what I use my handheld for is I talk to what they call repeaters. And what it is these guys, they set up repeaters all over the country. And you can go online and figure out the frequencies that these repeaters are operating off of. And I can contact that repeater with that handheld. And when I hit that repeater, I call out on it. Whoever is also on that same frequency of that repeater, that repeater bounces it. It's like a
cell tower.
It's like a cell tower. It's taking my frequency, and maybe this won't go 60 miles, but when I hit that 30-mile away repeater on the mountain, it's bouncing it on across the other side of the mountain where this can't reach. So you can hit those repeaters and lengthen your distance, but I was hitting about 25 miles to a repeater with that antenna, and probably, I would say, 8 or 9 miles without it, with the stock rubber ducky here.
Yeah, these are called a rubber duck because, it literally is like the same rubber they make the ducks out of, and they, going. So it is you know, they function, but you would want to upgrade it. It's a pretty inexpensive thing. You can get them as cheap as $20, so they'll get you out there like what the range is talking about.
And
so,
you just, you know, once you get into it, you do your research and find out which one's best for what you're trying to do. You know.
yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
So, depending on the classification you get as far as the license, that allows you to use only so much power or more power, or you get to increase the amount of meter bandwidth that you get to operate on.
That's correct, and we're not going to get quite into that yet because what you're talking about is the band plan, and that's what the license allows you to. It basically tells you what license class can do what and how much power they're allowed to use. Basically, you're allowed to use up to. Nothing can exceed, according to the FCC, nothing can exceed 1,500 watts, which is just a measure of power. That's not really relevant at this point. Once you're in it, that'll start to make more sense. But there are certain restrictions. Like I said, you're not allowed to, as a technician, you're not allowed to use the full functionality of this radio, of the base station. Even as a general class, I'm a general class, and even I can't use all of the frequency available to me until I get the extra class exam. But the general class opens the world up to you. That's a pretty common saying within ham radio operators. General class opens up the world to you. But there's a lot of things you can still do using this even with a technician. So it's just, they give you a little bit more allowance the more licensing you get. It's kind of a pay to play like you see with software stuff. It is what it is.
Look at it like this as well, brothers. If you don't, I look at the good analogy I like to use is it's like a gun. You can have a gun on you, but if you don't ever use it, you're not going to be a good shot, right? Well, so you need to start with the base level of learning. You want to start with a little gun. You know what I'm saying? Something that you can be accurate with and learn on, and then you can move your way up to general, up to, on up in the higher licenses class, and then you start working around the world like what we're trying to get to. Well, what our mindset is, like I said, it's to communicate with each other across America, and you just got to start small. Start small. Don't let it overwhelm you.
Hey, two things. So, I have this radio right here, the base model, whatever. Can that contact repeaters?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then real fast, I know you didn't want to go into it, but the quick question, the meters, is that like the dips, the length and the dips of the frequencies?
All right, here we go. So I'm gonna dive into this, and I'm gonna try to keep it. I'm gonna try to kiss it. We're gonna keep it simple.
All right.
So if you're looking at this stuff, see, this is a 2-meter radio. This is a 2-meter or 170 centimeter? 70, okay. I don't know why I was saying that. This is a 2-meter or a 70 centimeter, which would be like 0.7 meter. So the reason why it says that, and why when you get on this radio, this radio goes from 10 meters all the way up to 80 meters. What that is, that's a physical representation of basically when these radio waves are going through the air, they're coming out of this antenna as a wave. You've probably seen a sine wave, like in geometry class, whatever. They show you this. Well, that's what the electrical energy is doing when it comes out of the antenna. So, and it travels at the speed of light. And 2 meters means it's going up and down fast enough to where the length of a full wave is 2 meters at the speed of light. So it just gives you a physical idea of the size of the wave, if you can see it.
Of the power, okay.
So it's pretty interesting, I think.
Wow.
So basically, the depending on what frequency, what meter band you're operating on, is where you're going to get your distance at. Correct?
Yes. Well, there's different characteristics to it. Like, for instance, if we're on 70 centimeters on a really short wavelength, it will do good close range. It's going to probably go through obstacles and things better close range. But we'll take, for instance, like FM radio versus AM radio. Like when you're in your car, the AM radio is just pounding through, and it sounds like you're getting them radio stations from far away, and it's coming through concrete buildings and all this other stuff. Whereas the FM radio is, it kind of doesn't like concrete buildings, and it doesn't go as far. But there's a time and a place for each one of them. So that's a good analogy there, because what this operates on is, at its lowest range, is actually close to the AM broadcast range that you'll be listening to on the radio. Whereas this one actually operates pretty close to the FM broadcast range. So that is a good way to think about it. Just think about like the difference of listening to a radio. So hopefully that clarifies that.
Just a quick question. Since you hit the meter, can you just relay the meter to megahertz?
Okay. All right. So we established that the electrical energy radiating out of the antenna is looking like the sine wave, and basically there's a 0 point, there's a halfway point of that wave, and it has a full cycle. And what Brother Tony said here, he's asking about something called megahertz, and that is a measure of frequency or speed, basically like a speed measurement. So hertz is how many cycles that wave does in a second. And actually, back in the day before they started using hertz, they would say cycles per second, because that's literally what it is. Mega just means how many millions of cycles per second is actually occurring. So, we're talking about with the frequencies you would use on a walkie-talkie is around 462 megahertz. So that means 462 million times per second that wave is actually going through a cycle. So you could draw all this out and graph it, and there's instruments where you can see it on the screen, and you can go crazy with this stuff. But does that?
Connected to the meter.
Oh, you want to know? Okay, so what I just said there with the what's called a FRS frequency, what the walkie-talkies normally use, that would be 462 megahertz. Well, that is in the 70 centimeter band. That's more what you're asking. Okay, and then you have, well, in this case, 147.420 megahertz is the 2 meter band, and then on this radio here. So I said it ranges from 10 to 80 meters. This radio here ranges from the bands of 29.5 megahertz down to 3 megahertz. So I could go through every single one of the bands there, but
Me, myself, personally, I'm just like, megahertz, put me on 70 or put me on 10. Which one goes out farther? Which one do I need to use?
I know that during the Gulf War, they had shortwave stations that got kicked off of certain bands because the military was commandeering that meter band or whatever for their operations. I remember that happening back in the 90s, and so I guess do they tell you to get off, or you get some type of
are you saying if you operate without a
if you're
license?
operating on a frequency, you drift over into some band where you're transmitting?
Well, actually, that's just part of proper radio operation. Like your SOP, your standard operating procedures, you're going to stay enough within the band where you wouldn't drift outside of it. But if you did, you might get notified by the FCC, but the likelihood you're going to see anything like this, anything made within the last 50 years, is probably not going to do that. It'd have to be almost on purpose to do something like that, because they're pretty solid. But like what you're saying there, you just brought up an interesting point. That's the reason why we have to have an FCC license to do any of this. He mentioned that the government will be using different bands. Well, each band acts a little bit differently. Like we said, the ranges, it just acts differently. They want to use it because it does what they want it to do.
Yeah, they'll want to send encrypted messages.
Yeah, and they want you off of it completely. And the license is, so the license is just basically so you know where to be and where not to be. That's probably the most important part of the license in their eyes.
So if you, for instance, on our, when we came up from Florida, we came up, all at once with a whole bunch of cars, and everybody had one in their car. That's how we would maintain communication. Like, is there kind of a rule of thumb with the frequencies where, like, the ones that start in the 124 range, the lower ones are like the legal ones, or the ones that are better used? Because one of the brothers in our group showed us these frequencies. I think they were in the 400 range, that two-way radios that you will buy from Walmart typically operate on. You know,
those are what I was referring to as FRS frequencies. That's Family Radio Service, or you'll see GMRS, which I think is General Mobile Radio Service. I believe that's what the acronym is for.
Yeah. This is exactly this right here. This is what he.
Yeah, GMRS and FRS. So basically what these are what I was referring to as your typical walkie-talkie frequencies.
You said right here?
Over here, yes.
Right.
And this stuff is, you just Google this stuff, and it's all over the internet. You can just Google FRS frequencies, and you can find the list all day. So,
okay.
Then it says here, do not transmit on frequencies you are not authorized to use, informational only. Because you could get in trouble, you could get fined. You got men in black sending you mail and knocking on your door potentially.
Me and this brother right here was talking about it earlier, man. It's like, you think, why can't I just pick it up and operate on it, right? Whenever things go down and, we don't have no cell phone towers, I guarantee you all kinds of people are not going to be licensed, and they're going to be operating on ham because it's available. But what's going to happen is if somebody gets upset about it, they can triangulate your signal coming out. They can say, oh, this signal come from here. Or, it bounced off of these two towers, so they got to be in this general area. So there's a lot to do with that there. You can also track somebody down like that, or you can hide yourself. You can learn how to combat that, or they can't triangulate you.
Yeah, actually, the ham to put it into perspective, the ham radio guys actually, it's a sport. They call it fox hunting when they triangulate somebody. But keep in mind, this radio is completely invisible until you turn this on and you push this button and it's transmitting something. You can't see this radio otherwise. This radio doesn't exist until you key the microphone up and you go click. Now you're on the air and you're public because we share the airwaves. We don't own none of that, so you can do some encryption methods. There's some things that are allowable, but you do have to keep in mind that you might be talking about something on something this strong and everybody in the world could hear you, when you should probably talk on it on here, and only the guy next to you can hear that.
So do you have some things that you recommend as far as group security?
Yes, that's a whole nother, there are tactics, and we have discussed those. Me and Brother Ethan and Brother Jim in Wisconsin, we've talked about a lot of this stuff. There's different ways of setting up these radios to where they will operate in a way to where it's not on one frequency. They're on two frequencies, and then they have basically almost like password protection between the radios.
Also, like we was talking earlier, brother, about the power. You can dumb that power down. So the less power you're putting out, the shorter distance you're going to reach out, right? So if we're in this valley right here and we don't want nobody to hear us outside, this you got like a 5-watt radio, and then this one here's an 8-watt, right? How much is this one, brother?
This, we'll just say for your, typically you're going to use this on what's called single sideband. It's 100 watts on power here.
Okay, so that's a big difference.
You can
right?
turn it down with a knob on here. You can drop it down to probably less than 5 watts on this one if you want to.
So we can take it to 1 watt and just talk in this valley. Nobody's going to hear us up on top of the hill.
Wow.
When we reach the top of the hill, we'll turn it up, stuff like that. So
we'll test this. Yes.
Yes.
What we can do, actually, since we're here at the feast and we have this proximity available to us, because we don't always have this, we're scattered. we can turn these radios down to 1 watt and see if you can even get out of the valley with it, because there's a time and a place
So-
to do that.
So this basic radio that I have, you could adjust the wattage on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Cool.
can turn it from 5 down to 1, and then his being an 8 watt, you can do 8, 5, and 1.
Okay.
So,
I don't really know that the 8 watt actually makes that big of a difference, but it's something. It's a little extra there.
it does make a difference over 1 watt.
Like brother was saying, I think you can get a base radio like this for $25, and then I think I paid close to 8. I got about 80 in that one. You do your research. All your handhelds are all going to operate on the same frequency. You ain't going to get different frequencies and stuff for different handhelds, correct?
Yeah, and these are all programmable too. I can plug them into the laptop and put whatever frequency that they can operate in. I can put it in there, and I can give it channel names, and there's all kind of stuff you can do with it just with a little USB cable. So,
How many of y'all have one of them?
everybody does.
I got the one I used to work at Walmart, so they have one.
Okay, so
One of those
how, do
business
y'all
ones.
know how to go through the frequencies on it? You got your scan button on there? Anybody use that? Yeah, so what you can do, like you can program it manually, go into the menu and set up the frequencies, but the easiest way to do it is hook it up to a laptop, and you got software out there that it's like a library, and you say, oh, I want this frequency, I want my weather channel, I want FRS channels, GMRS channels, I want UHF, I want all this, and you just pick it on there, and he'll download it straight to the radio, and then when you hit scan, you're scanning through all of those.
You can personalize it to your community.
Like earlier, me and brother was sitting up there talking about it, and some of the elders and stuff carrying these walkie-talkies around here, and they was like, they thought it was pretty secure that not many other people with regular walkie-talkies could reach that frequency. Since I had all them frequencies programmed in my radio, I just hit scan and I picked third frequency up just like that, didn't I, bro? I mean, it was quick. I hit it.
So can you talk about being in a community and how to avoid things like that? How would you set that up to avoid that? Or I guess that's the question.
No, say it again, brother.
How would you set up a community for security?
Well, communication's key, right? So we're going to set up with handhelds.
So you can stop what happened. Like if you don't want other people to listen to you.
Yes.
Encryption.
The way I was telling you about, it's not really encryption. It's called a PL tone, or which is that's actually Motorola's trade name for it. It's called privacy line tone. Because you see on this paper here, y'all can't see it, but it'll be on the video. CTCSS. I'm not going to give you what that acronym means because I can't remember it. I know what it does. So this says PL tone and CTCSS. It's the same thing.
You pretty much take that frequency, whatever frequency, say everybody gets on 146, but then you change that PL tone to say, we're going to say 9.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Nobody
the
else knows that 9's the password. But then, what if somebody comes on 9? That's when we need to be having our code, instead of get the gun, it's blue.
They had that last year.
Right.
Security team does.
Yeah, you're never fully secure. You're never somebody's going to hit in. So that's where your code talk's going to come in for security wise.
So what happens with the PL tone is the reason why it's not encryption, but it's a method of security for this, is because what it does is while transmitting what you're saying, there's an underlying tone that's sent with it that you can't hear, and the other radio is actually listening for that tone. And so what happens is if there's another radio on the other end, or you're trying to talk back and forth and that tone is not present, the other radios just aren't really gonna, it's basically going to block it out. So it's a little bit more to it than that, but effectively what you can do is it almost leaves it on a muted state unless that tone's present, and it kind of hides you a little bit.
So, with turning down the watts on it, like I think you said that the base model radio, you could turn the watts from, I think you said 5 down to 1, right?
Yeah,
So-
there might be a mid power, but I think it is just 5 and 1.
Okay, so if you went down to 1, roughly, what would be your broadcast?
Well, I think just you'd be able to get anybody within this. You'd be able to get anybody within the valley, but I don't think you'd get over the hill with it.
A lot
you
of
might be
it.
able to, but not very far.
A lot of it is those waves has to penetrate. You know, you got to think that power has to penetrate. You got mountains here, trees. You know, if you're on a flat land or up on a high hill, you're going to get a lot more distance out, a lot ease of distance than you would down in this bowl. So you got to kind of work that, you know.
And actually, that's another one of the things where we talk about the meter bands and the characteristics. These higher frequencies tend to need the height more. So this radio may perform not too much different down here versus on top of the hill, whereas this will be night and day difference down between the top and bottom.
And that's all have to do with
That has to do with the frequency, because the way that wave travels, being the frequency, it affects it that much.
I had that with just like a FRS radio. I got an FRS radio and it said 6 miles, right? And I did. I was like 5 miles down the road or so, and I could hear them talking, having conversations in this valley, up there, like 5 miles up there on Galen Road.
Yeah, so if that's what we figure, you know, if we learn, like we said, you know,
That doesn't mean it happened all the time.
they might have been pushing 5 watts, and maybe we could take that down to 1 and conceal it a little bit more, you know, but that's something we'd have to figure out.
So how do you find with that radio, and if you were in Missouri trying to reach down to Tennessee, and you don't have the internet, a list of, you know, what repeater to tune into, how do you know what to tune into in order to bounce that wave off to get to Tennessee?
That's a good question.
That is a
brother.
great question.
So really, you're not going to do it with a handheld like that. You're not going to reach that far.
High frequency, high power.
Are you talking about this one here? You don't use the repeater with this one.
No.
That's that. Okay, so these, if you're trying to get any real distance with them, you're requiring a middleman. You require a repeater, which is either set up through the internet or some other means. Most of them are through the internet. I can't think of any other way to do it. There's other ways of doing it, but you can either do a repeater that actually will patch over with the phone line. You can do it with the internet.
But
you
that's
can do it
digital, bro, and that's not what
Yeah, we don't. It's cool. All right, it is cool.
Might as well be your cell phone, brother.
But it is a cell phone. That's all you're doing is basically
Can
just turning
someone
that.
bounce a signal off of yours? Off of that?
No, this is not a repeater. This doesn't repeat. But the good thing about this is you can go long distance point to point with no middleman. And it's all analog. The good thing about it being analog, it's not digital. It's not, like we said, you can track it, but it's not like they pinpoint it to your location right here and they know your cell phone's in your pocket, which pocket you're in and how much change you got in your pocket kind of deal. You don't have that.
When we're talking about going that far, bro, this is the goal right here.
Yeah.
You forget that. Forget reaching out state to state with that right there. When the grid goes down. Right now, if you want to learn into it, you get into digital modes and you're programming frequencies and tones to reach this repeater, and then it through the internet it'll reach one up in Maine, and you can talk like that. But you might, like I said, you might as well be using a cell phone at that point.
So generally your repeaters are like local in this spot. It might get you out into a regional area.
Yeah, like I
Maybe that's what their intent is for, like,
Actually,
disaster relief.
Exactly,
and stuff
like I said,
that,
bro. Like
right?
I can sit in the mountain valley where I live at. I live around a bunch of mountains, and a lot of the repeaters are on top of mountains, so they can reach out farther. Because, like we're saying, you're up on the hill, it does better. But like I said, I may not be able to reach across the mountain straight without the repeater, but I can hit that repeater and then reach on across.
Yeah. And I do that at home. Now what he's describing is a situation where he's got hilly terrain, which changes it because, like we said, the height is a big factor with these higher frequencies. I live where it's completely flat, but our repeater tower is 300 and something feet up, so I can reach out. You can basically service the whole county with something that high up with 100 watts of this frequency, and so you can. It is basically a cell tower. It always boils down to just relate it to a cell tower because that's effectively what it is. And actually, cell phone cell phone technology came from this stuff. Because I can actually dial. Watch this. Here. We'll get on here. This will be something interesting for you. You see there's a keypad on here, right?
Right.
And it has pound sign and asterisk and all that. All right, you're on 3.
No. You're gonna call my phone?
No, but if I had a phone patch, I could. So you look here, I'm transmitting. He's receiving. So you got these. You can actually do stuff like that. That's actually a different type of tone, but that's like kind of what cell phones came from.
Wow.
So the repeater is kind of an early form of a cell tower.
You
so
can
that's
talk
why
to a repeater by them tones. You can get into certain rooms and stuff like that. These repeaters use by those tones. So you hit the repeater, you're on it now, and then you want to get into a private room by that tone, and it'll hear that tone, that little, and it puts you in there automatically.
Same thing as like a phone switching system. It's pretty interesting.
Like the
Again,
Matrix.
That's digital stuff that will be useless in grid down, but it gets you a good understanding and gets you a feel for using it.
So in the valley with the high power base station, it doesn't matter. It's still going to transmit just as far.
Well, like an antenna for this, you're probably going to, at minimum, you're going to have we'll say we're working on 80 meters. You call it working. You're working the band. You're working the radio. So we're going to say at minimum, the antenna you're going to have is you're going to have an 80 meter long. Basically, it's going to be 2 legs of 2. There's going to be 40 meters split like this, and you're going to throw it up in a tree somewhere. That's the minimum you're going to do. Matter of fact, me and Brother Rich have talked about doing it. You want me to throw a wire in the tree? Like, you could. It works. It works pretty good. This is just a stainless steel rod, and this is the 2-meter antenna. So that's all. This is the whole antenna. There's really nothing serious going on here. So it's tuned to be able to send out that frequency well. So you've got that type of antenna, so it's going to be up there anyway. It's going to have some height. But again, those frequencies, they don't care about it because the way they get around, you'd have to get into the science of how they interact with the atmosphere and stuff to describe that. But the way they do, they can get out there without the height. But you also put those antennas on top of towers and stuff too. So
something really cool first, brothers. Who knows about Morse code? You know,
I've heard of it, don't know it.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Don't know it.
So what I kind of found out, and I'm kind of interested in, is I can set up a rig, a Morse code rig. You can do Morse on all these pretty much.
you could. But this one's like this type of radio here. They specifically have what's called a CW mode, which is the Morse code mode. You just switch it over here, and it's got filters in it to where it's.
I can set up a little cigarette pack radio with a Morse clicker on it and take that to the top of the mountain, throw my wire up in the tree, run it off a little lithium-ion battery, and I can reach China with that. Because Morse reaches out way better than this. So, you know, that's something else to think about. You know, if a couple brothers know Morse, you know, we can reach real far like that, and you don't have to have all the high-end licenses to run Morse.
Yeah, actually, as a
technician, base level, I can run Morse code. I can go up there on the mountain with my little backpack and set that up and reach out a long ways.
I don't know which band you could do it in, but yeah, there's what they call band allocation for technician class licensees to be able to do what he's talking about. So, and you would be on like 1 watt, so it would be, and you'd still be able to reach.
Yeah,
out.
you're using that little battery. You're not using any power, so it's really efficient.
I see a couple hands. We got brothers.
Yeah, for sure.
So, in a grid down scenario, what would be the best way to prepare ahead of time to use the big one to be able to like actually coordinate? Like, okay, we're in Tennessee transmitting to Kentucky or transmitting to Straitway, Philippines or whatever. How do we coordinate that and we know what frequencies we talking on and all that? Like, do we have to, because we don't have access to the internet.
That's going to require a lot of pre-planning. It's going to require a lot of communication beforehand, and that's why I can't just say, hey brother, here you go, you're good. because you have to do, like Brother Ethan said, that's part of doing it. You gotta go train.
We can't just
The
say those
air
radio,
is-
we can't just say, oh yeah, just put that radio in your house, brother, and when shit goes bad, we'll contact you, We're gonna have to practice this, brothers. That's why we're trying to have this meeting. It's really overwhelming to me, but at the same time, that's basic, man. We need communication, and we need to get on this. As brothers, we need to come together so we can have stuff like this.
So as far as how I understood it, because I looked into this a little bit, you basically need the license in order to learn radio etiquette, because you have so many frequencies, so many bands. You don't really want to, I guess, cross over or step on too many toes to where you get yourself in trouble. So you actually need to go through the licensing process, get the foundation of it, so that way you know how to communicate, and then you kind of branch off from there. Do I have that right?
That is true, but there's also one thing we didn't say. I mentioned this, but I didn't make it very, very clear. You have to have a license to push this button and transmit. You don't need a license to listen to anything. You can listen to anything without a license. So if you get a radio and you sit there and listen to it, like in this case, I could put this thing on and we could listen to shortwave broadcasts like the stuff Pastor used to put out years ago. You can listen to it on a radio like this, but you can also get on there and I can listen to some dudes over in North Carolina just chopping it up on the ham radio, and you can listen to how they do it. And in the case of the guys I'm thinking of, they don't use good radio etiquette, but there's a lot of guys that do. So most of them do. But you can get on there and listen to that, and you can listen to how people get around on there and what seems to be acceptable. And you can listen all you want.
Yeah, listening is fun.
It is.
Listening to airliners.
All right, we got you.
What is the very first step we should take? Should we look at radio? Should we be taking classes? What is the first thing we should do to get involved?
Well, you already got a radio, don't you? You got one of these?
Not one of those. I got a little blue one from Walmart, so that's not the same thing.
Well, so you got your hands on something you can play with.
Okay.
You should get studying for the technician exam. You need to get in touch with a radio club, because there are local clubs. Like in my case, you can Google that. They have radio clubs, and you can say, hey, look, I'm wanting to get into ham radio. Actually, you and there were several brothers who had to. I didn't want to talk to a radio club, and multiple brothers had to be like, just talk to the stinking radio club. Because I'm like, I don't want to deal with them, but you kind of have to.
I went up in there and there was a bunch of weirdos, bro. And I'm just like, hey, I'm here to take my test, and then it was like, hey, they started filling me in. I'm like, what kind of radios are y'all running? They're like, blah 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 blah. I'm like, well, I got a Battlefield. That's base model. It's as you start. So me personally, I went and got a radio because I wanted to listen. I had to put my hands on it. And I went and got a radio, started listening, didn't know how to operate it, didn't know how to program it, and then I started studying for that test, studying to get that technician license. That's that base license. And then you start getting all this flooded information in. But like I said, I used the app, crammed it in like a week. And I couldn't tell you half of what I've learned on that, but now I can actually operate the radio, and I'm learning more and more as I'm going, Just you need to get a radio, and you need to get that license and get in contact with people who's doing it. We got a group on Marco Polo called Straitway Turkey Hammers, and my brother here spits all kinds of nerdy shit out. and you're going to be like, I'm just going to skip right through this deal because I don't even know what he's talking about. But that's a chance for you to come on there and say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, bro. Inform me.
Yeah. So that's a Marco Polo?
Yes, sir.
Just to back up what he said about the Straitway Turkey Hammers group, it gives you opportunity because, like he said, he does spit out information. To me, it's technical information. I'm in IT, so with that being said, you doing your research and doing your due diligence when you actually go, because there's plenty of videos that he's talking, people ask questions, and he's giving out information, answering the questions. You doing your due diligence and going back and watching those videos, it'll start building that foundation, and things will start to click. And it's like, oh, he's talking about this. Oh, he's talking about that, and then it'll kind of build up your information, build up your confidence to actually one take the test, because he also answers questions about that. Am I right? Like if you ask, right? He answers questions on that, but at the same time, it's still going to build up your knowledge base so you'll be more confident about what you're operating. Because the more confident, to me, the more confident you are about it, the more you know about it, the more you can actually do. That is my opinion.
What's the total number of people on turkey hammers?
17 right now, but that doesn't include. There is several groups that are just brothers in different communities. I would say there's probably pushing like 30 brothers that are just connected with me and other brothers just in different private groups outside of the Turkey Hammers and including Turkey Hammers that are just like, hey, I want to know about this ham radio thing. So it's not just like this little.
Maybe we can blow up turkey hammers and get it focused on getting your license for a bit.
There you go.
To get a dozen or so more people getting their license.
I gotta get more.
So then we can get some of these radios and some of these base stations.
I think that's fantastic.
Hey,
And
got a question back over there.
all right, you're right. I forgot about you.
When I was a kid, I used to have this scanner. I don't know if it's like a handheld video scanner. And I used to actually listen to people conversations throughout my neighborhood. Like, I could hear you on the phone talking and what you talking about.
Yeah.
If a person got a scanner like that, can they kind of like tune in on what you're saying using these walkies and receivers? Because I mean, like I said, I used to
do that.
Yeah, because I used to listen to people like all the time when they talking
me too.
about it and everything.
Actually, you could do that back in the day, and chances are what you were using is a scanner on 900 megahertz frequency, because the cordless phones used to use that.
Actually, I don't even think it was cell phone.
No, I'm talking about like cordless house phones. That's probably what you were listening to.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
Because you got. I'm not going to name any names because maybe the brother wants to remain anonymous, but there's a brother standing here right now, not me or Brother Ethan. There's another brother standing here right now that has listened to like drive-throughs, people's cell phone or conversations. Well, you know, hey.
Baby monitors.
Baby monitors. You could listen to a baby monitor.
That shit you're not supposed to do. That's what I used to do.
I was trying to keep you anonymous. You did it. You let the cat out of the bag. Okay.
So damn nosy,
You
Daryl.
can't actually.
That is great drive-through. That's hilarious.
It's the way that those phones and that kind of stuff. He'll tell you can't listen to it no more because they changed the frequency on it. So that's a good thing. So for privacy's sake.
Yeah, I used to hear a lot of stuff.
I'm sure you did.
Walmart, grocery stores.
Hey, on these small radios, turning it down to 1 watt or whatever, will that also preserve the battery? Like
When
help
you're
the battery?
transmitting, yeah, it will.
Oh, okay.
It won't change nothing on receive, and it won't affect how it receives. It's only affecting what's being sent out. It doesn't
Okay.
affect anything else.
But
Talking about security in your own group, can you talk about MERS?
This?
No,
box?
not that. I actually don't want you to talk about that right now.
Okay.
Just
MERS.
using the frequency MERS. I've heard that the frequency's lower and it's not going to transmit as far.
Well, I actually don't know as much about MERS. Are you talking about 220? 220 megahertz? I haven't messed with that. I haven't messed with that yet. But I actually, if it is the frequency range, I think it is. Did you say it was?
I'm not sure.
I've actually got access to.
You can program MERS in off the software, just like you put FRS in.
You're right. You're right. That box isn't MERS.
This could go everywhere. That should stay in Straitway 100%.
Gotcha.
You understand what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Hey, I have a question about
my question is, if you check a ham radio and get on one of the, I guess it's the FMRS channels, can they distinct if it's a ham radio versus a walkie-talkie?
Okay, well here's where we get into how this is not a walkie-talkie.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Walmart one with the permanent antenna.
Oh, because I was talking about the antenna thing, right? That's not what it was?
Yeah.
I told you about that? Okay. The way they tell the difference, if they can tell the difference, because it's so little difference overall. So this is actually not really supposed to be an FRS radio because you can do this. Part of the rules for FRS is you can't have a detachable antenna. And the radio should not be allowed to go over 2 watts, period. And these can do 5 and 8, even though you can turn them down to 1. So you still can actually play by the rules as far as power goes. But I don't think they'd be able to know the difference because, like Brother Ethan was saying, the difference between 1, 5, and 8 is going to be so minimal. You basically have to get turned in. The FCC actually doesn't police that much. It's mostly red flag type stuff. That's your neighbor turning you in that gets you in trouble with this stuff if you were to do that. Come out for my people.
So while we're learning how to use these and studying for our license, can we learn how to listen to you via that?
With this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you could talk to us.
Not on that.
Not on this.
It does not go on the same frequency.
Gotcha.
Just one quick question about a type of radio like this. Whenever I looked online, this is a Pofung GT1. Whenever I had looked up about it, it said that Pofung was the American brand of Baofeng. That can hit 16 different channels.
Okay.
Though I've seen that there is software that you can use to program that type of radio. Can it hit?
I probably have that software. But
Wow. Okay. But can it hit can you program those different 16 channels that it can get?
Yes.
The different ones?
Yeah, so say if this is FRS, and we'll say that for whatever hardware limitation, it only does 16 channels. You can go in here with a laptop with the same cable. I'm pretty sure because I just looked at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You look at that, and you look at that port there. They're the same.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenwood and I think Yaesu, they still have those 2 holes in the side like that. Because he's got a Yaesu. So actually, there's a lot of radios I can program with the same cable. It just uses the software just talks different.
Okay.
So yeah, you would just change the frequency and then send it to the radio.
Okay.
Yeah, here's another brand too. Same 2 ports. It's going to take the same cable. So, that's a good thing. That means the investment, the $20 investment for the cable, means you're going to be able to program like everybody's radio. So
these radios are actually I think 2 for $30 or something.
How many watts is it?
I do not know offhand. I'd have to.
You give Outliers or a small group those, and then your group has.
Yeah, because that might be for someone who ain't worried about
here it
your
is.
license. They just want to talk
7.4.
7.
I think that's voltage.
That's probably
frequency 400 to 470 megahertz. Here.
So who's going to write the security manual?
It's 5 watts.
5 watts.
Security manual. I think that's going to be a concerted effort. I think it'll be one person.
You see what I'm saying? You're talking about communication. I'm talking about how to use it tactically and how to make sure it maintains security and safety.
Well, you said who's going to do that?
It needs technical knowledge, but it needs
tactical knowledge as well.
Tactical knowledge as well.
Well, like I said, I think that's going to have to be a concerted effort. I don't think it's going to be just one person because we all have different strengths and weaknesses with all that. So.
Yeah. Terrence, a question about licensing. So, because of this whole Corona situation with COVID, when you take your test, do you go in person or can you take it online?
All right. Well, everybody's scared shitless, so it can be difficult to get somebody to get to pull. There's a 3-person team.
You have to take it. You have to take it in. You can't take it online.
And that's not true. That's not true. That just changed. That's why I pointed at him when he asked. I was like, no, you can actually take your test online now with the New England Amateur Radio Club. You can get a hold of them. You can say, I'm trying to pass my test. They have strict guidelines that say you have to be getting better than an 88% on your practice exams before we'll even administer the test. We don't want to waste our time. That's what they're saying. But it's pretty simple.
Is that because of the corona stuff?
Yeah, so because of the COVID stuff, you actually may not need to access a radio club. You might just need to call these guys up in New England or send them an email and say, hey, I've studied, I'm ready to take the test, and you'll have to provide some documentation. You're going to need to have your social security number for this.
You mentioned a while back to me that there's a book that you can get to study just the basics and some questions that are, are typical to being asked on the exam.
Actually, they take the question pool and give you all the answers right there and explain to you why.
Okay.
So that's how it works. They actually take the questions.
So what is that book? Does it have a title?
I have PDF copies of all that, so I can send you that. There's like a crash course test prep guide.
Put that up on turkey hammers.
Yeah, I did. So
Is the book there or is the app there?
you use both because it's actually the same questions.
I use the book, to try to get basics down, but like I said, I use the app because I was just packing the questions in.
I did the same thing. I didn't just like learn it and then just know it really on the test. I memorized the test questions, and everybody that administered my test told me they did the same thing. So, and
you may not understand what that question's about, but you'll remember that question, of what the answer was if you answer it 4 or 5 different times.
Yeah, you make it a habit of like almost muscle memory.
What? No, I've never seen it.
No, you do cheat on that test.
So basically, the exam is like got to do with how you conduct yourself on air, like the technical aspects of it.
The higher up you
they're
get,
different.
The higher up you get, the more technical. That's why I haven't passed my extra yet, because it's like nerd level way over here. The general was even like still a lot of etiquette, because the etiquette's a little bit different on this than it would be on that too. But it'll become second nature once you. Brother Alex has a question.
So once you contact a repeater, how far does the repeater send your transmission?
It depends on the repeater. Depends on the height of it, the power that it has, and environmental conditions. Like I said, all this stuff is working with the atmosphere, the ionosphere, and so your weather actually can dictate a lot of that too.
So to continue that question was, so if you're standing with one of the 5-watt radios next to a repeater, transmitting to the repeater, and another repeater is closer to that, can that potentially transmit to like hundreds of miles?
So you're talking like skipping rocks. You can do that. I've heard of people doing that. I haven't done it, but I think it is possible. You could actually probably puddle jump, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, but that's
like
what
that.
we was trying to do, and I don't.
We were doing wires X. That was a
rely
different
on that
protocol.
for cross-country communication. Is that right?
Yes.
Or can you rely on it?
If there's electricity, without electricity, you got that, and you got this. So
a lot of repeaters are set up solar panels. They're set up self-sufficient.
It depends on the repeater completely.
And people, you can build your own repeater. That's what everybody does. They just build their own repeater and say, I'm going to take it up here and put it on the mountain or whatever, and they register it with the FCC, and then it's a known frequency, and it's listed up in the repeater.
It's all registered.
Repeater book.
This brother here had a.
Oh, that was actually my next question about. Is it necessary? What we're doing, what we need to do, is it necessary to build our own repeater for our communication?
We have a repeater already. It's not fully set up yet, but we do have in as far as Israel, we have a repeater, and possibly another one on the way. So, that could be
for
done.
The individual, each individual.
No, you don't need that. No, but that's something that like if Straitway had a repeater, that'd be awesome. Everybody offlanders could all talk on it. Yeah. But no, you don't have to have one. I don't need one. I just
each community need one. Like 4 hours.
He said each computer needs one of them though.
Yeah,
I would say each community does need this. You at least need somebody with a general class to be able to use it, but you don't need a repeater. You were next.
Yeah, in the grid down situation, what's your power solution? Because this ham you were saying is 100 watts.
Yes.
Probably use more than that to power it. If you don't have power,
solar generators.
Yeah, because 100 watts is very easy to generate. Now I will say this too. You can run this out of your car. This power supply is not necessary to run this radio here because this is that's plugged into the wall, but they run off of a DC like 13.8 volt supply, which is what your charging system in your vehicle puts out. So This runs in your car. This can run in your car. Almost any.
Wow.
It's actually kind of rare to find a rig like this, the HF rigs, that actually will run. They have their own built-in power supplies. Most of them have an external one that run off of that supply. So an RV, and you've got enough roof space where you can put up a decent antenna on the roof of it. So there's.
I'm just wondering now, is Straitway working on a repeater frequency that can be shared amongst all of Israel in case of such an emergency?
We haven't gotten that far into it yet.
This is it, brother. This is us. I mean, you know, that's we need to start with the basics, and we're trying to set it up, you know.
So how many people have licenses besides these two guys?
Well, there's actually 2 other brothers on land who are licensed.
That's my point. It needs to grow. The licenses need to grow before you really do anything else.
Exactly, because I can scream on this thing all day long, and you might even be able to hear me if you have any kind of shortwave receiver. But if you can't talk back, what good is it? If you, like Brother Luke said, if you can't talk back and forth with your brother, you are not doing yourself any. If nobody else gets their license, it'd be useless for me to get a higher stage license. Like,
If you know, this Straitway Tennessee and Straitway South Carolina's the only one doing it. What's that help anybody else? You know, that's why we're trying to have this, is so we can get everybody on board and link up.
Actually, we did have two people here at one time. I thought Elder Becker was one of them, but he wasn't. We had 2 people here originally. One, he got his general, and I think the other one got a technician's license. So yeah, this was something that we had done early on, like within the first 2 years or so, when we were here. Matter of fact, the guy had the technician license, had his wire strung across the trees over here, right here by the creek. Yeah, and then the other one had something going on up the hill too. So yeah, they're no longer here, and we never did, continue on.
Never got to getting back in
radio went bad or whatever.
Brother Dexter had his hand up.
So, and then, especially with what he's saying, it seemed like the baseline should be like, obviously we all here, I don't know what communities everybody with, but we should be starting off with at least 1 or 2 people in every community that's getting a license, because, and I'm saying 2 because you never know what's going to happen. So that way we got a starting point for being able to communicate, because we all want to be able to communicate with each other.
And then actually in an emergency situation, anybody can really use it. But if you don't know how to use it, it's useless.
Yeah.
So at
Teach your brother.
at that point, you have somebody that can say, okay, well, this is how you use it. You have someone who can basically, like he said, teach everybody else how to use it. So that's where, yeah, you're right.
Cost for a base station.
That varies a lot.
Yeah. What could I get one for? You.
This radio right here with the external power supply, with that desk mic there. Well, the antenna is part of it.
You're gonna need an antenna.
You're gonna need an antenna. So just that part, basically all your indoor parts of it, that was like $350. But that's you're gonna be able to do it. Now the antenna, like I said, there's different options for coax. You're gonna have to have something to connect your radio to the antenna. This is your standard coax you typically use for ham radio. You can use, like, I've been experimenting with your regular satellite TV stuff. There's some things you have to do to make that work. But there's a couple different ways you can go about it, but you have to buy this stuff. This isn't very expensive. You're talking like $1 a foot or something like that.
Yeah, but to set up a big HF base station is going to be the most expensive radio to set up.
Yeah, so you got the cost of the radio.
A good $500 to $1,000 to get one going, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking like you could probably pull off $400 or $500, and you could have something that would really be able to get out there with a properly set up. How I was describing with a wire antenna thrown in a tree, that gets you out there far. That's a good antenna. It might require more maintenance, but you can do it.
Is it better to get something newer, or is there any advantage of looking for something that's used online and older?
That radio right there is from the early '80s,
Dang.
and it's tough. Actually, some of Some of the newer stuff, we've discussed this a lot actually on the Turkey Hammers group. I think you've probably seen some of that conversation going back and forth where some of the older stuff is more serviceable, whereas the newer stuff, you have to be a straight up electrical engineer just to be able to get your hands inside that thing. So me and Brother Ethan, we've started working on the radios. Brother Ethan fixed the CB radio of his because it was an older one. It's more serviceable.
I don't know.
So it can be done. It can be done, but the older stuff's easier to work on. So.
I contacted. I went to a little ham get together like in my local town, you know, and all these dudes had generators set up. They had solar panels set up. They all running, you know, like a grid down scenario.
They're all preppers, by the way.
Pretty much.
Well, that's field day in general. That's what field day is, if you've ever heard
but,
of it.
I went there, and a dude let me hop on an old school base station he had set up there, like old 2-amp base station, and I was hitting Canada. I was talking to people in Canada, like middle America, you know, all kinds of places, man. South America, whatever, and we was hitting it.
Dang.
And a lot of that had to do, like, that first hour I got on that base station, we was hitting a lot of Canadian people up north and stuff like that. And then as the night went through and the weather changed and the sun rolled and all that, we started hitting different areas of the earth. And it has a lot to do with your weather and all that, time of day, time of year.
Winter times seems to be a good time a lot of times.
For the lower frequencies, yeah. So, but that's something you learn as you go. I mean, it can
You figure out how to manipulate it.
Yeah, you can.
So my question is, I don't know how you guys are on time or anything like this, but what would you say, I guess you say, overall action plan for the group?
Right.
What's your goal? What's the goal, or what should be our goal if we were to place one? What's our action plan? What should we
What's the action steps to
Just
conclude it? Yeah.
Get active, man. Get that base license, man.
Yeah, get the technician license, get yourself an inexpensive radio just to be able to do something, and
share it with your brother.
Communicate with your brother, because as you go along, you're going to have more questions, and we're going to be able to say, hey, do this, do this, do this. But getting that license and getting your hands on an inexpensive radio is going to be what gets your foot in the door.
All right.
I think you mentioned that was a CB radio.
It's
this
not
one
CB.
is.
It's not CB, but
So
it's
what's the difference between a CB and a ham? Can you use
the
CB
frequency.
as a ham?
No, well, you can modify one to do that, but the frequencies that CB operates on are set up to where they're limited to 4 watts. It's actually a frequency that this radio here can it's between bands on that radio. It's what they call 11 meter. So it's actually sitting between 10 and 12 on here. And
it's pretty much just the same as the difference between this and that. You know, it's just a different frequency that they're
I
operating
mean, you
on.
could actually use CB as your local comm if you wanted to. You can actually get out pretty decent as long as, like, it's in the summertime, you're in the high of like the solar cycle. You could talk all around the world with the CB, even on a relatively low power. But that's very unreliable because of the low power, because you're really playing with things there to get it going. It's not as easy to do as with this.
Oh, we getting ready.